Hi, what's up everyone? I'm sure you have lots of questions related to IT, so did recruiters during our recent seminar, and I'm going to answer the 4 questions that I remember from the seminar. So let's start with the first one. Why do software developers use frameworks? So, they use frameworks because they want to make their lives easier. If you think about what a software developer usually does, well, they need to code, right? They write code to produce some website or some online product, and the framework actually makes it easier because lots of projects, lots of online products have pretty much the same functionality, right? There is some login, there is some logout, there is some work with database, right? So without frameworks, they would have to code everything from scratch. Same as, for example, with a PowerPoint presentation, right? You have already some pre-made templates, so you don't have to, create all these layouts from scratch. And so do developers. They choose one of the frameworks. For example, for PHP, there are some frameworks. For JavaScript, there are some frameworks. Some frameworks are for front-end work, to work with a front-end website. Some frameworks are for backend APIs, right? So different frameworks have different purpose, similarly as templates in PowerPoint or Word. Okay, so let's keep it short. Next question, what are microservices? Was the second question. Well, if you think about the projects, in the past, usually there was one huge monolithic application. So all the code was written in one repository. You can imagine it as a file in Microsoft Word, right? Like one huge file. And then as soon as the file grows beyond 100 pages, 200 pages, 500 pages, 10,000 pages, then it's really difficult to keep track of the file, right? Like it gets difficult to copy paste it, to share with colleagues. Imagine a 10,000 page long Google document file, right? It would take forever to open even in the browser, right? So same with this monolithic application, the trend is to just split, to cut different pieces out of it and create different microservices. So these different microservices provide service to other microservices. So that's the architecture style, to build different microservices, different services, different projects that communicate with each other through APIs, through these application programming interfaces. But if you guys don't know what is an API, I'll explain it in a different video. So I hope you understand this concept of microservices as something that is smaller, it's easier to manage, it's a smaller chunk of code, and it can be scaled. That's the major benefit. Developers can scale, for example, one microservice on different servers, while the other microservices are remain as they were. Okay, let's move on. To keep this short, what is asynchronous communication? So say, imagine you and I communicate, we meet in a meeting room and I say something, you process it, you think about it, and then you respond back in a meeting room. So that's synchronous communication, because I tell you something, you think about it, and then you respond back. Asynchronous is, for example, this video. I record this video, I send the message through the video to you, you process it somehow, and you may get back to me in a week. So that's asynchronous communication. You can do something, I'm just not waiting for your output. We are communicating asynchronously. Yeah, I hope that clarifies. What tools or frameworks can substitute each other? So this was a great question, because we talked about the frameworks, software frameworks related to, I guess it was Java. So here, or it was JavaScript? Well, never mind, that doesn't matter, but what matters is that usually there are some frameworks that can substitute each other. So for example, for JavaScript, web development, for the front-end development, there could be used either React or Angular. And then developers choose either or. Some developers prefer React, some developers prefer Angular, so they choose, they can choose either of these two. There are more, obviously, but some other types of frameworks are better for another purpose. So for example, for say in PHP is a programming language, there are frameworks that are better suited for only APIs, to build APIs on the backend. So again, developers choose this because it's more lightweight framework. It's easier to use. It only is good at what it's supposed to do. So to build the backend APIs. Okay, so substitutes are, and now why is it important for you as recruiters? Well, because you are looking for example, JavaScript front-end developer, and then the framework, either Angular or React. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter as much because a developer who has already been working with Angular can learn React, maybe within a week or two. It's not rocket science if the developer wants and is driven and is keen to learn, obviously. Okay, so these are the substitutes. So what you as a recruiter need to learn is pretty much like what are the groups of frameworks. For example, in Java, what are a few frameworks that can substitute each other? And then next time you are looking for a developer on LinkedIn, for example, you can compose this Boolean search where you type different frameworks and you have or in between. Okay, so these were the four questions. I answered all of them. We were actually looking at the guide to confident small talk, where we look, for example, we look at a role, for example, a developer, or I think we were looking at a web developer, and then we had a few questions about this role. We also looked at the worksheet to IT roles. And I think many of those questions come actually from looking at the job description and trying to answer these questions. So it's always good to understand these terms, because then it starts to make sense. All of these, right? Job descriptions are not any rocket science. You can learn this. It's all here. It's actually all in the IT Recruiter Toolkit, where I talk about these topics and I explain it in depth. So if you at some point feel like, hey, I want to get to my next level, this can get you to the next level, because in the IT Recruiter Toolkit, you will go through step by step all these topics, such as how to rewrite job descriptions, how to make them more attractive, where to source candidates, how to even use GitHub, and then deep dive to different roles using different frameworks and tools. All right, so go to IT Recruiter Toolkit if you have any further questions. Have a wonderful day.